Brian Coleman was a peculiar man with a peculiarly charmed life, a best-selling novelist with a modest ego and a tasteful brownstone home in Boston. Brian had it all: a celebrated career, a devoted readership, and a wife whose patience knew no bounds. Yet Brian had a secret, and like all good secrets, it lived in the shadows, tucked away behind the mahogany doors of his private study. He called it the room. This was where Brian wrote, where he dreamed, and most critically, where he spoke worlds into being. Literally, there was a tape recorder on his desk, always loaded with a fresh reel. When Brian wanted a character to enter his story, he didn't type or scribble. He spoke into the microphone. A single paragraph, vivid and precise, was all it took. I'd like to introduce a woman named Ava. Red hair, French accent, a curious laugh. She's confident, sluttery, and a bit dangerous. Within seconds, Ava would appear, just like that. No flash, no sound effect, simply presence, as if she'd always been there, belonging completely to the moment. She strolled in barefoot, clutching a wine glass she hadn't had before she arrived. Her eyes, like dark olives, twinkled with mischief Brian had given her. "Bonsoir, mon écrivain," she purred, sliding onto the armrest of his chair. "Ava," Brian replied with an indulgent smile. "You were marvelous in the last book." "I aim to please." She took a sip of the imaginary wine. "But you've grown boring lately. You don't summon me anymore." "My wife's been around the house more often," Brian confessed, "and she's suspicious." Ava pouted an exaggerated gesture. "Then perhaps I should write her out." Brian laughed nervously. "That's not how it works. Only I create." "But you also destroy," Ava reminded him, glancing at the fireplace. It was true. Just as he summoned life with the recorder, he could unmake it by burning the script he'd spoken. In that fire had disappeared characters, entire plots, even a tiger once. Though Brian hadn't thought that through. "I'd call you again soon," he promised Ava. "You always say that." She vanished. Brian leaned back, exhaling. Ava had started as a side character, a temptress in a Cold War spy novel. But over time, she became more than fiction. She was confident, danger, vitality, everything his life had grown short of. Marion Coleman had once been the brightest editor in Beacon Publishing. That's how they met. A manuscript on her desk, filled with promise. She'd sharpened Brian's prose, trimmed his tangents, and eventually married the man behind the metaphors. She was statuesque, elegant in a silk scarf and paperback sort of way. She believed in order, cause and effect, and never in things like ghosts or magic, or tape recorders that summoned living beings. One rainy afternoon, returning home early from a library board meeting, she tiptoed past the study and heard her husband talking. But there was another voice, a woman's, laughing, French. Marion froze. She knocked, and there was silence. Brian emerged, flustered. "Darling, didn't hear you come in." "Clearly. Just working. Dialogue workshopping." She peered into the room. "With who?" "No one," he lied. That night, as Brian slept, Marion crept into the study and examined the desk. She found the recorder. Curious, she pressed play. Ava, red hair, sluttery laugh. Her face darkened. "You're cheating on me." she said at breakfast. Brian choked on his eggs. What? Ava. He froze. You know about her? I heard your little performance. It's not what you think. You made her up. Yes, you're insane. No, Marion, I create characters. Real ones. When I speak into the recorder, they come alive. Flesh, blood, mind. They obey me. Marion stared. You've lost your mind. I can prove it, he said, rushing to the study. No need, Marion replied. Following him, you already have. Brian clicked the recorder. Enter Ava. She appeared. Burgundy silk, bare shoulders, wine glass. Marion screamed. Ava smirked. Bonjour, madame. This is impossible, Marion whispered. Impossible? Ava echoed, but enjoyable. Now do you believe me? Brian asked. Marion touched Ava's shoulder. Warm. I want her gone. She snapped. Fine. Brian pulled a yellow notepad from the drawer, a spoken script, and tossed it into the fire. Ava blinked out. Marion staggered back. You're playing God. I'm a writer, Brian said. Isn't that the same thing? Over the next week, Marion avoided Brian. She didn't sleep in the same bed, but she returned secretly to the study. She eyed the recorder. Her fingers itched. She pressed record. I want a man named James. Mid-30s, handsome, kind, attentive. He listens. There was a shimmer. Then James appeared, lounging on the chase with a kind smile. Hello, he said gently. She gasped. For 3 days, she visited him, talking, laughing, touching. James was the kind of man who remembered your favorite book, not just your birthday. He wasn't like Brian, distant, arrogant, lost in his world. He was perfect, too perfect. She asked him about his past, and he had none. Just pleasant fragments, a beach, a book, a smile. Like he had been painted with broad romantic strokes. Brian found the page. James, brown eyes, sincere, devoted. He confronted Marion. You used it. You created Ava. She was fiction. So was James, until he loved me. Brian stared. You crossed the line. Did I? She challenged. Or did I just follow yours? They fought, words flying like daggers. In the end, Marion stormed out. Brian entered the study, picked up the script for James, and fed it into the flames. Marion returned. Where is he? I ended it, Brian said. Her eyes filled. You murdered him? He was fiction. He was mine. Brian couldn't sleep. Marion had stopped speaking to him. He turned to the recorder. I want a counselor. A woman. Late 50s, British. Wise. Like tea and thunderclouds. Her name is Dr. Bly. Moments later, she was there. Seated beside the fireplace, glasses perched on her nose. You're in trouble, she said. Brian nodded. You gave yourself too much power. I just wanted characters, Brian muttered. Not a wife who'd fall for one. Then perhaps Dr. Bly said, you should have written her better. He looked up. What? You write people, Brian, even the ones you marry. His eyes widened. Marion? Dr. Bly nodded. He grabbed the recorder. That's not true. Marion's real. We met in college. She edits my work. She is allergic to shellfish. How could I have written that? Because you needed someone who'd anchor you, who'd challenge you, who'd teach you restraint. You mean she's fictional? She became real because you made her that way. Brian staggered into the bedroom. Marion lay on the bed, reading. "I need to ask you something," he said. She looked up. "What now? Do you remember your childhood?" "What kind of question is that?" He waited. She frowned. "Yes, I think so. My father had a bookstore. My mother made cherry pie every Sunday." He whispered. "I never wrote that." She blinked. "What?" "I didn't write your memories. They're yours." "Of course they are." Tears welled in Brian's eyes. "Then maybe you're not fictional." Marion closed her book. "You don't get to choose what's real, Brian." Alone in the study, Brian lit a match. He held it over the pile of old scripts. Ava, James, dozens of characters, worlds, lives, gone in a moment. He picked up the recorder, pressed record. "This is my last story. There's a man named Brian. He's a writer, but he gives up his control because he loves a woman who isn't his creation. A woman who became more real than he ever was." He looked towards the fire, paused, then clicked stop. In the living room, Marion watched Brian walk in and kneel before her. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I made a world I thought I could control, but you taught me otherwise." Marion placed a hand on his cheek. "You always wanted your stories to live." They did. "You ready to stop playing God?" He smiled. "Only if I can start being a husband again." They embraced. In the study, the tape recorder clicked one last time and stopped. If you enjoyed the video, like and share the video and subscribe the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.